Robert, do you keep track of everybody that's here, all the community board people? Addison, I am hoping that we get some resolutions out of this. So if you want to,
Okay.
you're here.
I
Yep,
can
Barb.
take notes or I can you know make
Yep.
resolutions.
And Barbara, I'm keeping a running tab of who's here, who
Okay,
leaves, who, et cetera, et cetera.
okay.
And this is our first time meeting as the Environment and Sanitation Committee.
That's right. No, it's sanitation and environment.
Oh, is it Sanitation and Environment?
It is.
All right, carry
It
on.
used to be environment and sanitation, so they switched to sanitation and environment.
Very nice.
That was Robert's doing, right, Robert? No. Is Will on also or not? I don't. Oh, Robert probably left.
Oh, nope, just me tonight, Barbara.
Oh, Will is okay.
Yep,
Everything good with Will?
I know Will is just getting us live streaming and recording, but
Okay. It was a beautiful day today, and
It was
Central
incredible.
Park was just beautiful.
I had an exam this morning, and when I finished, I went outside. I went on a walk. I walked around Riverside. It was great.
They had purple trees and white trees and green trees. It was beautiful.
It was
You're
almost
done?
slightly too hot.
Was that your last class?
It was my last exam. I have a bunch of final projects now that I have to do.
Oh, I
So,
thought you're done today.
so I'm done with classes today. I'm done with all my exams. I have 4 essays that I need to write.
Wow.
So, and a problem set. So I have something for every class. But
So do you
I'm
have to go
getting
back on campus?
no more classes. So yeah, I don't have to go back on campus.
So you just hand it in electronically?
Even this exam was done electronically. I did end up handing it in to my professor in person, but
Yeah.
yeah, I can't believe 3 years of college are over at this point. It's weird.
Yeah. Okay. I'm hoping for more.
I feel like most people will join at the 6:29, 6:30
Yeah.
mark.
Robert, just so you know, I think two Ellens, Ellen Sills Levy is going to come on for a short time. She's our public member, but she can't stay for very long. And I think Ellen, I just spoke to Ellen Pallavi about something else, and I think she's going to tune in too. So you'll see two Ellens today.
gotcha.
Where is everybody? Oh, good. Justin is here. Could you unmute Justin?
Justin, you
Justin
should be
Green.
able to unmute.
Hi, yeah, hi.
Hi, Justin. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, you're welcome.
Wait a
Should I
few more minutes.
should I try sharing my screen?
Well, not yet. Let's get started. I want to introduce you and
Okay. Well, just
couple-
to test it out here.
oh, you want to test it out? Okay.
Yeah, so Justin, while I'm sharing the agenda right now,
Uh-huh.
it won't let you screen share at the same
Okay.
time. So,
And is Devin coming also? Is he here?
No, just me. He had to something with his kid,
Oh,
so just me.
let's give it another 4 or 5 minutes and see. There's a couple of people I expected to come.
So that actually sounded pretty good. And it's not a
We'll give it another couple of minutes. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Do you think we should get started? Addison, Robert?
I think it makes sense for us to start.
Yeah, okay. Welcome, everybody, to the new Sanitation and Environment Committee. We had two separate committees that we have combined into one. And tonight we're going to talk about composting in very interesting ways. First of all, I always want to thank Robert and Will, our people that help us through all the time. And Robert is always wonderful in helping all along. With my co-chair, Sahar Hossein and Addison Lev, we have this committee that we've been working on. I also want to put a shout out for two people that gave me three people that really helped. Valerie Mason's our chair, and she's the one that said we should do composting. And she introduced me to one person who introduced me to another and another. So we're so pleased to have Justin Green, who I will introduce in a minute. But I got the best education from two of our community people. One is Christina Del Figo, who lives on Roosevelt Island, who is absolutely amazing and has taught me so much about composting. And Sarah Gallagher is from Grow NYC, who also we had coffee together and spent so much time talking about composting, gave me so much information. So I am so pleased. And we really thank Justin Green for coming. Justin is the founder and executive director of Big Reuse. It is a nonprofit environmental organization that is dedicated to zero waste and fighting climate control, which is, of course, what's major on our list. Just to give some guidelines, we've sort of thought of 3 different topics to talk about today. One is overall why composting, what's important in terms of the environment and in terms of sanitation. And the other are 2 other issues that Justin will talk about. One is we as users, where do we put our scraps? And the second will be, and where do the scraps go, the processing centers from there. We hope to have another follow-up meeting that talks about the ABCs of composting. I had a lot of questions. What is good to compost, what isn't, and so on. But today, I think we're going to learn a huge amount, and hopefully we'll get some resolutions at the end of how we could help with the composting procedure. So Justin, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for having me. I would, now can I share my screen?
Justin,
Robert?
you should be able to now.
Okay, great. Oh, all right, it says host disabled, participant screen sharing, so maybe.
All right, give me 1 second. Try one more time.
Okay. All right, looks good. Okay, hold on. I'm still getting there. Oops. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, a little bit about, thanks for having me, appreciate it. My name is Justin Green. I'm the executive director of Big Reuse. Thanks, Barbara, for the invite. And yeah, we worked really closely with so many people on Roosevelt Island over the years. It's been a great partnership and great connection for us. Christina just did an amazing project with the planting, the mini forest that was a really incredible project that she just they had a planting 2 weeks ago, which was great. And they used a lot of our compost to make that happen. So it was really good partnership. Just another extension of our partnership with Roosevelt Island. Yeah, community. So I'll start a little bit about Big Reuse. We are a nonprofit that fights climate change through community-based zero waste and environmental initiatives. We have a big reuse center that's in Brooklyn that takes in donations of almost anything from books to building materials to home goods to furniture to almost anything reusable. And so it's like sort of like a half of a Home Depot size. So it's a pretty big space. We used to have we actually started in Astoria, but lost that space with development. And so now this is our only space in the city that for reuse. That reuse center helps fund other programs, and through funding through City Council and Department of Sanitation, we fund community composting program, environmental outreach, where we worked with Department of Sanitation on their curbside outreach, volunteer engagement, job training, and street tree care. So I need to add to that slide. Now, why do we want to compost? That's something we've been working on for a decade, is getting New York City excited and people involved in composting. First reason we want to compost is it reduces landfilling and incineration, reduces the amount of material we send to incinerators, which are in Newark, which pollute the air around Newark, or landfill at other communities around the country. And in landfill, the organic material we put into landfill breaks down and generates methane. So the bacteria that are breaking it down generate methane, like natural gas, that kind of methane. And methane is a climate change gas that is 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at warming. So, and it's in the air in our climate for about 20 years before it breaks down, degrades into carbon dioxide and other gases. But while it's there, it has this really high warming potential. And current estimates estimate that it accounts for about 30% of current warming, right? So methane is something we want to avoid releasing to the atmosphere. Landfills are the third largest emitters of methane. And methane comes from putting organic waste into landfills, where it breaks down in the landfill without, in an uncontrolled manner, breaks down without oxygen, and the bacteria then that flourish in that atmosphere without oxygen are the ones that create methane. If we compost, we're composting it in a controlled method, putting a lot of oxygen and mixing it up so that the bacteria and microbes that take over actually use oxygen, and so they don't generate methane when they're breaking down all the organic waste. Compost obviously has that's the first reason we do it, is to reduce methane. The other reasons we started doing it is because a lot of us were connected to gardens in Queens and other greening projects around the city. And the city's soil, if you looked at any street trees recently, the soil is pretty sad. What these trees have to grow through. The parks get a lot of usage. New York City has by far the least green space per capita of any city in America. So it all gets really heavily used, and it's all dependent on the soil. And the soils are not in these natural ecosystems where they can regenerate. There's not like the street tree is just isolated by itself, surrounded by concrete. There's nothing to feed that soil to help that tree grow. So adding compost to that soil, adding compost to parks, adding compost to our gardens. A lot of the gardens, when you're building our gardens, the soil is too polluted with lead to actually want to grow vegetables in. So you need to build raised beds. That requires like a soil amendments. Then you get down to other further benefit uses. Compost improves the soil in a whole bunch of different ways. It protects against, it helps absorb stormwater. It increases soil fertility, all these different benefits for the soil. And the soil is like, it's sort of crazy about soil. We're completely dependent on it, obviously, for life on Earth, but we're still learning about it. We still don't know everything there is to know about how soil functions and how complex, because it is such a complex system. It's such a complex ecosystem that happens outside of a lab. And we're still understanding how to really keep having the negative impacts we've been having with our typical agricultural processes on it. And so compost is another way of just adding that nutrients and microbes back into soils of New York City that don't really have access to those natural ecosystems. So it serves as both benefiting climate and improving New York City's green infrastructure. It absorbs water better when the soil has compost in it by almost 5 times the typical soil. It reduces compaction, lots of good things. And there's a lot of soil in a lot of organic waste in New York City that needs to be composted. It's a third of our residential waste stream. So it's almost 1 million tons of organic waste every year that could be composted. It's yard waste, food scraps, and like soiled paper towels and things. And so we could make a lot of compost from that. So we're sort of at a decision point as a city, as we launch curbside organic waste collection. Like, what do we actually want to do with all this organic waste we're going to now collect separately. So the city, just if you guys haven't been following, the city's launching curbside organic waste collection. It's in Queens, it's in Brooklyn already, where everyone has access to it. It's going to expand to Staten Island and the Bronx, and then Manhattan, finally Manhattan. And every resident will have access to curbside collection of organic waste. And then it will become mandatory, and everyone will have to do it. Well, sort of how as we have to do recycling. So only as good as the enforcement, but theoretically, everyone will have to participate and separate their organic waste. What do we do with our waste now? So a lot of it gets shipped out of the city, goes to incinerators, goes to landfills, and gets trucked and trained a lot, really long distances away from the city. West Virginia, like you throw out something, it could end up in a very good chance it'll end up in West Virginia or Ohio. That's as far as we ship our waste, because a lot of the landfills closer to us have been filled up, or an incinerator in Newark, which is really problematic, obviously. The city's rolling out curbside, as I talked about. It has a composting facility in Fresh Kills in Staten Island, but that's really only going to accept mostly Staten Island waste. It's not going to accept other waste from other parts of the city. We rebuilt the system there based on a system that we piloted underneath the Queensboro Bridge. Here is community. So let's see. Wait, did I miss one? Oops, I missed one. Oh wait, sorry. Oh, there it is. What the city is doing now with the Brooklyn and Queens waste is they are taking it to the sewage treatment plant in Greenpoint. So if you've ever seen those huge eggs in Greenpoint, on Newtown Creek at the northern part, the border of Greenpoint and Queens, those are sewage treatment plants. That treats a lot of the waste from that are in the city. And what that does, and why the city's decided to take our organic food scrap waste and yard waste there, is because those eggs are set up to generate methane in a controlled environment. And they want to put that methane back into the natural gas grid that currently heats and provides gas for a lot of stoves around the city. It is not the ideal from our perspective, not the ideal solution. What comes out of those, what's left after the digestion process is a mix of sewage and the food scraps. So no one really wants to use that in your garden. It has a lot of microplastics and PFAS and other chemicals, because all of our sewage in New York City is mixed together with everything people pour down the drains. It's all the street drains, a combined sewer. So everything that the rain hits the streets in New York City goes down those drains in the city, mixes with the sewage, and then goes into these sewage things. So they have to take everything. And then we're mixing food scraps in with there that could be composted and used for productive use, are now getting mixed in here to help make more methane that National Grid wants to add into their grid. There have been a lot of issues about their interconnection. It cost $40 million to build this interconnection. The natural gas that they're going to make from that, it's going to heat about 5,000 homes, but they spent $40 million. You could have converted a lot of homes to heat pumps, electric heat pumps, and electric stoves for $40 million. And a lot of times it doesn't work. So that connection of these eggs that are making natural gas / methane and putting it into the national gas grid doesn't actually work. And so they end up just burning it off in Greenpoint, and these huge, basically flares that turn on and like shake the neighborhood. So, Greenpoint's seen a lot of environmental pollution. Just announced recently that they're trying to address all the dry cleaning fluid that covers like 30, 40 blocks. So it's not great to add another air pollutant source to Greenpoint. This is not our favorite solution, but it's better than nothing. It's better than putting it directly into the landfill, because it reduces the amount of methane that will be generated in a landfill. So it's a, you know, an improvement. This is what we've developed. So over the last, since 2011, we've been actively community composting. So at this scale, underneath the Queensboro Bridge in Gowanus, Lower East Side Park, at Queens Botanical Gardens, on Governor's Island, composting at these really small, these sort of larger scale, but not like community, a little bit bigger than community gardens. Sorry. And been able to really integrate in the community. So these sites take like parks, leaf and yard waste, mix it with food scraps from residents, and then make compost to go right back into, you know, community gardens and parks and street tree care. You know, when you think about, oops, this got out of municipal composting. Wait, going the wrong way here. Sorry. Community composting can also be even smaller scale. So when we talk about community composting, it can be backyard composting. It can be composting at community gardens. And then it's sort of using that compost right there where it's made. So that's sort of the most, you know, efficient way of doing it. I mean, it takes a lot, sort of, it doesn't benefit from large industrial scale efficiencies, but you're not transporting it and you're using the compost right there. So here, here's one, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance has a whole hierarchy of composting, of like, you know, how to prevent food waste is reduce it at the source, rescue edible food, home composting, small scale, decentralized, and then going down all the way to larger scale sources, because they have sort of reduced beneficial impacts as you get into those larger scale systems. So right now, this is what's happened. So green bins, which were collected at farmers markets and community organizations, we're going to community composting. Brown bins go to the city operated site at Newtown Creek into the digesters. Also the orange bins, for the most part, are going into the digesters. There's some getting into deeper why we want a community compost. You know, I like to say it's the most sort of efficient, equitable, engaging, ecological, and efficient way of doing it. It's happens locally, so we don't. If we compost here in the city, and on these smaller sites, we're not putting the waste onto other communities and shipping it out of the city. So it's more equitable in that sense. It's more ecological because we're not shipping it. We're dealing with it right here to help our green infrastructure. It's empowering because it gets the community involved in fighting climate change and improving their own green infrastructure. And it engages because we have lots of volunteers working with us to do the work. And so for last 30 years, the Department of Sanitation funded this work. They funded training at the botanical gardens and work like we do, which is community composting. That got cut in the last budget cut, so I'll get to that. But and we're still fighting for it to be restored with this city council battle of funding. So here's a sort of example of what we're trying to restore. So food scraps will be dropped off at community groups and farmers markets, and like your farmers market on Roosevelt Island had it. We collect it in those green bins I showed you. We take it back to our sites. This one's underneath the Queensboro Bridge. We mix it with the food scraps and the leaf and yard waste from parks. We make a big pile, mix it up. This pile is it's an aerated static pile. So it's actually like a fan and pipe that blow air into it, into these piles here, to make sure that the microbes, the aerobic microbes, the ones that want oxygen, are the ones getting enough oxygen to keep the pile from generating methane. So as much as we can keep them aerated and happy, they will break down the pile, decompose it into fertilizer without generating much methane. And this is our pile this is our site underneath the Queensboro Bridge. We built this site out starting in 2017. Got National Composter of the Year award for the site, and we're now also, the city's basically making this push on two fronts to get rid of community composting. They cut all of our funding from the Department of Sanitation, and now Parks Department is trying to push us off this site and underneath the Queensboro Bridge. Here's our process of testing it for temperature to make sure it's hot enough to kill any weed seeds or other bacteria that might have been in the food. Then we screen it to make to get the wood chips out, some of the big chunks of wood chips, and then we use it. Here's our site underneath the Queensboro Bridge. As I said, so right in that area just north of us, right here, is this area where Parks is going to make a little park there. And so they're saying they have to move these 3 containers and these 3 trucks, so they need to kick us out of our composting site. What we do there again is we take all the leaf and yard waste from Parks in Western Queens, mix it with food scraps, and give it back to Parks. So we give back Parks 700 cubic yards of compost a year, to Parks, to Green Thumb, to other groups, Street Tree Care, community gardens, all sorts of uses around the city that improve green infrastructure. Before we took over the site, this is what it looks like now. This is what it looked like before we took it over. It was squatted by these construction companies, used it as a dumping ground. We worked with the Department of Sanitation to remove 40 30-yard containers of garbage from it to make this site. So we think we did it. We're doing a pretty good job improving it for the community. And now that it's improved, we've built in also here bioswales that capture the water from the Queensbridge runoff. And there's a bioswale right here that puts that water to use so it doesn't spill out into the street. We have lots of people come by the site. Here's our other site in Gowanus, which is getting also got torn out by DEP, but though DEP is rebuilding it as they put in combined sewer overflow tanks. How much more time do you want me to go on, you guys? Give me a time.
I think you could go on.
Okay, cool.
I'll
keep going.
I think you've mentioned both, but what I see is 2 problems for our area is the site under the Queensboro Bridge for Roosevelt Island, but where would the sites be for our community? And number 2, the lack of funding for the green markets.
Yeah, well, we want, one of the things we're, going to ask people to help us with is both, letting Parks know by going to our website that they want our site to stay underneath the Queensboro Bridge, because we would take food scraps from Roosevelt Island, and before the budget cuts happened, we were composting the food scraps that were dropped off at Roosevelt Island at the Queensbridge site, and then using that resulting compost to do all sorts of green infrastructure projects, including things working with groups on Roosevelt Island. Lori, do you have a question?
Maybe, Robert, can we start asking questions? I don't know if there are. I have. Can I just get started first again, just to do it? For our community board 8, the Upper East Side, if we have, or when we have composting, where would the processing go? Where does the composting go? So we do have like a bin, I think, by Asphalt Green on 91st or 2nd Street and East End Avenue for an hour or 2, and one on 96th Street. What happens to that compost? That food scraps. I don't mean composting.
Yeah, the orange bin. Well, the orange bin's probably being taken to the digester, like the sewage digester right now. So those bins are not getting composted. So the city sort of made a mistake when they rolled out curbside composting, because they're not actually composting. They're digesting. So it's it made a bit of a misnaming with that.
Tell us again what digesting means. I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah, so it's mixing it at the sewage digesters that are in Greenpoint. There are these huge sewage digester eggs that handle our sewage. And so what they're doing is they are grinding up the food scraps into like a slurry, like a liquid, and then they're injecting it into the eggs. And those food scraps actually help the eggs make more methane. The idea being that then they can create energy, renewable natural gas from this and use it to help power various homes.
So it's
They've had a problem with
counterproductive.
it because it hasn't worked out as planned. Like their connection to National Grid's gas lines have not worked as intended, and so they end up having to flare a lot of it. And it's problematic too because we're also then we should be starting to remove natural gas infrastructure, methane
Yeah.
infrastructure, not adding more.
Right.
So that's another issue. So there's a lot of investment now and a larger IRA funded boom in investing in natural gas infrastructure. And it's problematic. US has now become the largest, this is not just from the IRA, but it's prior policy too, that have led, there's been IRAs invested in renewable natural gas, but even prior to that, we've become the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. So we're, we're not reducing natural gas production, we've increased it and become the biggest exporter of natural gas in the world. So we're going the wrong way on natural gas in the US.
And the other question, when we did have composting at the green markets, where did it go? When they collect, we didn't have, I'm sorry,
that came
collection
to
of food
us.
scraps. Where did
Yeah,
it go?
That would come to us or Lower East Side Ecology Center or Earth Matter in Governor's Island or other sites, local sites, to be composted locally and put back into the community. So those farmers market drop-offs did come to us. And then when the budget cuts happened over the last, since January, Grow NYC at the farmers markets has been driving a lot of it to Staten Island, where they actually is a composting site operated by the city. So that they made an exception and took that. So those were going all the way to Staten Island.
Okay. Robert, do you want to ask people from the public first and anybody that has questions? If not.
Yep, you have Barbara, you have 3 hands up. You have someone from 4 hands up. You have Ellen Polivi, you have Laura Jackson, someone from RIAC, and Lori Boris.
Great. Thanks.
Anyone in particular that you want me to call
Or
on
the
first?
whoever the first one is, go ahead.
All right.
I think it was Ben, Robert.
I beg your pardon, Sahar?
I was just saying that it was Ben who had his hand up.
Yeah, Ben is from RIAC, I think.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay,
You're welcome.
let's the first one from the public, is it Ellen Polivi? Let's go with Ellen Polivi then.
Am I on mute?
Yeah, you are, Ellen.
Okay, so first I want to say that I am absolutely a supporter of the composting, and I'm going to be asking the community board if you would do a resolution about supporting composting. But now I would like to ask kind of like a devil's advocate question about the natural gas, because I know the power company is very proud of the idea that they are using renewable resources now and getting rid of whatever they had been burning before. I guess it was coal. And, you know, on Roosevelt Island, there used to be a terrible smell coming from the power plant across the river. So we haven't had that smell in a while. So I know that they've stopped burning things there.
Well, no, they're still burning.
I'm wondering what, you know, like it's not a terrible thing that they're burning things that are now renewable, but I'm not sure what, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the question. I'm
Like
not sure
I got some
question is,
answers,
but
but
I
I'm not
want
sure.
to know how,
I
but-
think I know. I think I know which way you're going. Well, there's a couple of interesting, sort of storylines there. One, the rise. So Ravenswood, which is a huge power plant across from Roosevelt Island, was actually bought by a new company or called Rise, and they're doing something super cool with it. Like they are using its connection to the electric grid to hopefully, and this is the big if, but the plan was to connect to wind farms that were going to be built in Long Island Sound and use that interconnection where it connects into the grid that these big power plant used to have and bring in wind power there. So that is their goal. It's gone through a lot of ups and downs with inflation and manufacturers dropping in and out. So but that was the plan, and also the plan for the other huge power plant at the north end of Astoria. So that's a good story, like starting to supplement the natural gas that they are still burning there. They still have these huge generators that help power the city that are powered by natural gas, but they were going to start using those interconnections to bring in wind power. Natural gas versus coal is another question. So we made a whole big switch to natural gas over the last 10 years. The Biden administration just brought out really strict coal pollution rules that are going to push coal out of use really in the US, which is great. Coal burns really dirty, contributes a lot to climate change. The flip side for natural gas is that when it escapes, natural gas is the same thing as methane. So methane and natural gas, same thing. When we're drilling for natural gas, a lot of times it's a gas, so it comes out all over the place, right? You can't always control where it comes out in landfills. You can't always deal with where it comes out of when you're, fracking for it. There's a lot of dirty ways to get it, and that release of methane, there's some studies that think it is actually just as bad as coal because it's not getting captured. When it burns a lot cleaner than coal, but it's a lot harder to harvest it without releasing natural gas all over the place, whether it's in pipelines or at the site where it's being drilled. So it's not, natural gas itself is not, unfortunately, not been the solution that many folks were hoping for. It has reduced some of our climate change, but it's still a lot of questions around it. Then renewable natural gas is a whole nother thing, which is sort of like how you think, if you're trying to figure out how we're going to invest in fighting climate change, like where do we want to put the priorities? Not like if you put into solar or wind, you're not releasing carbon dioxide ongoing. The reason that folks think of renewable natural gas as like a climate friendly gas is because they're like, oh, well, like we, brew this corn to make ethanol, which is a similar story. And now we can burn it because when it grew, it pulled out carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And as we all know, ethanol is another one of these stories where the consumption and the energy used to make ethanol from corn almost consumes as much gas as it produces. So it's like doesn't have these positive impacts we're hoping for. Where we know solar and we know wind, like once they're installed, are going to be continually producing clean energy without releasing any carbon dioxide when they're being burned or manufactured. So there's still a lot of people pushing for renewable natural gas, and I feel like it's really problematic and should be looked at pretty carefully.
And you have hope that the wind and solar will be able to supply our city?
Oh yeah. It's wind and solar are so much cheaper now than per kilowatt hour than coal and natural gas and oil. They're by far cheaper because the prices of solar panels have come down so far. We've gotten so good at generating wind. There are other complications of installing that at scale we need to. It's sort of a permitting NIMBYism issue for wind, and then solar is more of a distribution and getting the utilities on board with deploying it at scale.
Thank you.
And then it's also in New York City where we have the peaks of of energy usage in the city are summertime air conditioning. So we could replace a lot of our heating in the winter with electric heating. I'm working on it. Well, do you guys want to hear about composting or energy?
Yes.
I can go on. Sorry.
I guess composting, but we'll have you back for everything else also. I mean, we've heard a whole lot with it. Robert, do you want to call on people or should I? I know Laura Jackson is part of the public that has her hand up.
Yep, and I know Sahar Cardon, Ben previously
Yes,
from
and Ben
RIAC.
says too. Yes.
So Ben, you're unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah. Should I go for it?
Yep. Go for it, Ben.
So I have two questions. By the way, I'm a member of the public as well. I'm a resident board member at RIAC. So I have two questions follow up. And one, thank you so much, Justin and Christina with an A for everything you guys done uh, to make composting a thing on Roosevelt Island. So I have two questions, which I know one is about the location. So I understand that you might need to, or you need to move from the location that you're at. And if Roosevelt Island, if we could convince the remainder of the board at RIAC to allocate a space for composting on island, would that be something that you guys would want us to look into? That's a question number one. And related to that, is there a way to create like micro composting? So instead of one large facility that takes everything that involves CB8, to have multiple smaller locations that are more closely connected to the communities that are going to leverage it? And last question is, how much funding do you guys need that now that the funding was cut? Like what funding is missing to be able to resume operations again, assuming that you have a location?
Yeah. Well, you guys already have a great composting site too out there. You know, you guys are doing a lot of composting on your own. We were just taking when those composting sites sort of get overrun, we would be there to take the what couldn't be handled on the site. So you could, you know, we've talked to someone at Cornell Cooperative Extension about, you know, whether there's like interest for a farm, not necessarily on Roosevelt Island. You guys don't have a ton of space. You know, you do have some space still, but we are looking for other sites to potentially move to. And yeah, the distributed model of like people composting in their backyards and community gardens, I think is a great, you know, model and can handle a lot of the waste that's generated. In New York City, where not everyone has backyards or community gardens, it can't handle all of it, but it could handle a lot. And then the funding question, you know, we were in this great space where we had been sort of the only option for the city to compost for a while, or not us, but us and associated groups. And so we had funding. We were operating 70 food scrap drop-offs around the city and bringing those food scraps back to our sites and composting, giving it away. So we had 10 staff working on it, which was great. And then we were able to do a ton with that, operating, let's see, show the other sites we're operating or some of the stuff we were doing with it. But the salt lot and distributing, here's us building, you know, community gardens. Here's an example of all the places. Not all, these aren't even all the places, but a sampling of the places. Blue dots are examples of where all the compost went from our site all around the city. And you know, the education we're doing at the site, we're helping Red Hook Compost Initiative compost, which is a great sort of urban farm in Red Hook that has a big composting facility. And having people come from Master Composter program, which is at the Botanicals Lower East Side, to do volunteer program and learn about composting. And we also were the outreach for curbside organic waste collection. So our budget was like for 10 staff was actually a lot. It was like $1 million a year. So we got, you know, we're able to do a lot with that. But so we've had to really, when the layoffs came, we had to cut all these outreach staff. So 9 full-time outreach staff. We had to lay off 7 compost project staff. Now we're down to 3 staff. working from that one site underneath the Queensboro Bridge. So, we can do a lot with a lot of funding, or we can make do with a little bit of funding. So we're hoping right now with the funding question, like the city council, like when the Department of Sanitation and the Mayor Adams cut our funding completely for our programs and the programs of Botanic Gardens and Grow NYC and Lower East Side, completely at the end of December, we had to, across the programs, laid off 116 staff. But we pushed back really hard, got all the city council people on board. We submitted almost 50,000 letters to the mayor and city council. And so it seemed like they were going to restore the budget with this round of funding. City council responded to the mayor's budget and had community composting as a priority. And then the mayor responded to that without including it. He didn't include the libraries or refunding parks either, and a whole bunch of other stuff that he cut. But yeah, so it's still a ongoing battle for funding. So that's what we'd hope to even just get a fraction. So New York Department of Sanitation's budget, right, for comparison, is 1.6 billion with a B. Their snow removal budget is like 90 million. And so they didn't spend like half of that this year. So they had like $40 million of snow budget left. So they could have funded, community composting programs in New York City for a decade with the unspent money in snow removal this year. So we're hoping they'll see that those options there.
Thank you.
Barbara, you said Laura Jackson was
Yes,
next.
how about Laura Jackson? That would be great. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you, Ben, for good questions.
I am Laura Jackson. I'm a long time New York City composter. This was compost from Governor's Island. A big supporter. There was a huge rally at downtown at City Hall, and so many of the council members came out for that. And yeah, what they mentioned at that rally is what you're saying. $1 million for the city budget is nothing. I mean, it's really very, very small. So I think it's absolutely worth funding it. And I second Ellen's suggestion. I mean, if it makes sense, if Community Board 8 could draw up a resolution in support of community composting, that would be fantastic.
I'm hoping for two, quite truthfully. One about, but I do have questions about it. The processing, I see it, am I right in seeing it as two separate steps? One is people like me would go to drop off my food scrapings, and then that will go to a processing center. So there's two needs, am I right?
Yeah, and also we've had Community Board 1 and 2 in Queens also issue their support for our site to stay at the Queensbridge site. That's more of a
Right.
Queens thing, but since we closed to Roosevelt Island, I think last time your Community Board, which the Roosevelt Island crew, which is great supporters of our work, had your Community Board issue a letter of support for that, the Queensbridge site as well. But so, I think ideally, we as a city decide we want to compost more than digest, and we want to support as much local processing as possible, especially at nonprofit organizations that can do so much more with it and engage the community in so many different ways.
So I'm still here. I wanted to continue. What I mainly came here to say tonight was my concern for the orange bins, that they do say compost on them, and I think that's so misleading. I started to use it not realizing until a friend of mine told me that's not compost. That's going to a biodigester. And so I looked into it, and yes, it isn't compost. So I'm wondering if it's at all possible maybe for sanitation to actually put up like cover up the sign compost and say exactly what it is. Because a lot of people may not be supporting the community compost push because they think they're composting already.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's how I was feeling. And it's like, whoa, okay.
Thank you.
So it seems like us even just making stickers that you actually put over that and tell the public exactly what it is that they are doing there.
Yeah.
So just my suggestion, like food scraps to bio, I don't know, was it biofuel or something?
Yeah, that's right. That would be an accurate description.
Is it
Okay.
any better than throwing it down your chute then?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, I don't want to poo-poo it too much because it is better than putting it in the garbage, right? It is better because that it's the methane is made in a controlled environment and then is able to be used to help keep that process going. So it turned into CO2, so it's better than just putting it in a landfill and releasing methane uncontrolled in a landfill. So that is better. That part is better. It is worse than, you know, composting it and being able to have a usable product at the end of it that is actually going to like help fertilize soil. It's not doing that. So like the using of compost is a wrong term. They should be like, you know, curbside digestate or something, you know, because that would be more accurate for sure. But it is better. It is better than landfilling. It's just, it's like, you know, the city could have gone 100% and they went like, you know, 40% in the right direction.
So Justin, I just want to ask in reference to that, because you mentioned methane. So when it is done this way, then it is not detrimental to the, you know, to the environment? Because I thought that is something we need to move away from, because that can be like 80% more destructive to the environment. So
yeah,
I'm a little...
it's better. It's better than landfilling, but it's like not as the digesting ends up with making more methane, which could be used to productive use, and then it also ends up with a biosolid that is like contaminated with all sorts of stuff that then needs to be landfilled. So a chunk of it is getting landfilled still after it's been digested and is not going to generate as much methane in the landfill. So the whole point of this is to reduce landfill methane gas release, right? And it is doing that.
And can't we use the money that we spent on those bins to do it productively?
Yeah. Well,
we can do that.
I mean, it's just, yeah, they're investment choices that the city is making now. And so we all have a chance to influence these long-term solutions that the city's not totally tied into digestate as the one and only way to handle this going forward.
I have just related to the same thing, that like when the methane is, you know, created through this, and when it is used as energy, doesn't it like kind of like, does it stay safe, or does it like kind of leak out in the system?
Well, so methane, back to methane is one, they've found out it's problematic to use for stoves. It's potentially the cause of like 15 to 20% of asthma. Is natural gas stoves, methane stoves. So that's a problem.
Oh,
and
that's
then
something I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's what? Wow.
Yeah, it's a recent sort of like, you know, I don't know how we didn't know about this earlier, but apparently we've just figured this out. And then the methane that is produced, you know, I think it, you know, it can be burned. If you were in a perfect environment and you capture the methane and burned it, it burns more cleanly than, you know, oil and coal for sure. But it's a problem is none of these systems are perfect. And that's where you get the negative impacts from methane because of all the releases in the mining and drilling and transportation and processing.
We should stay away from it. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have the Roosevelt Island Garden.
Yep. You have Ben's hand up again. You have Julia
Let's
Ferguson.
get the ones, and Lori will get to you after the public. Let's get to those that haven't spoken yet, if that's okay. We have Julie. I thought I saw somebody from the Roosevelt Garden.
That's Julia.
That's Julia. That's
I
Julia.
just renamed her. So,
Okay,
Julia, there's a prompt to mute coming to you.
Hey,
Yes.
Julia.
thank you.
Hello, Justin,
Hi, Julie.
and thank you to Community Board 8 for having this meeting, very important meeting. I'm happy to be a resident of Roosevelt Island, and also we are part of Community Board 8, and
Yes.
we feel very much part of Manhattan.
Mhm.
And geographically, we became connected to big reuse through compost. And I just want to state that the New York City compost system that Justin is talking about, with the many sites across the city that are inside the boroughs, they were all working together. So some of that compost, I would see Grow NYC trucks that often picked up compost in Manhattan. I would see them as I drove home by the big reuse site. The Lower East Side Ecology Center, who were promised to have their composting site back, they lost it. So this very small $7 million part of our social waste services, as well as our social infrastructure, has been taken away by the budget cuts. So I'm really glad that you guys are speaking to Justin, because in my learning as a volunteer on Roosevelt Island, since I first met Big Reuse in 2015, all I have learned is how we are all connected across the city for a better climate, for safer soils, and for connections with each other, and for less pollution. So it's as this was cut in December, I learned, how do you explain it doesn't work on a community board level? Big Reuse helped us on Roosevelt Island to rebuild our small community composting in our garden. So we compost everything that comes from our garden. And when they were in Astoria, they gave us wood to build that compost system. And all through these years, we would call them, they would give us advice. So these medium scale sites would feed the smaller scale sites. So there's this buildup. It's almost immeasurable of how we are all connected and how their education helped. Then Roosevelt Islanders, we became connected not only to Manhattan, but also to the pumpkin smashes that would happen across the city. And we learned about the mulching services that Manhattan has that we don't have on Roosevelt Island for our Christmas trees. So then we were able through them to learn about these things and help REALT get started. So there's this, I just want to say, it's kind of like compost, something that is, dead leaves and wood scraps and your kitchen scraps, then becomes this magic black gold. And that seemed to happen also with our connections with people. So I just wanted to ask Justin one more time, and I appreciate you guys listening to me. Justin, say again, was it 7 million is the very small amount for the whole community compost system? And is that the correct amount? And then secondly, could you give us again the kind of compost that was generated and given back to communities? As a volunteer on Roosevelt Island, I can walk the entire length of Roosevelt Island and show you guys places where the soil has been regenerated for butterfly beds, for pocket forests, for trees, for Big Reuse has met with REAC many times, talked to them about how to compost, trying to work with the state. So Justin, what kind of compost was given back to the city, and how much is that total budget?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's great. You guys have been great partners. We've loved working with Roosevelt Island and so many great projects there. So that's been a great partnership. One of the many great partnerships, but we've had. So that's really
So
always.
like Big Reuse, how much compost and give backs? What are some of those numbers that you
Yeah,
guys
so we
generate?
No,
compost.
Derek
Just from your
Gallagher's
one
going to give
site.
you some numbers. I know.
Yeah, I mean, we compost
Christina.
over 2 million pounds of material a year, and then
Mhm.
that translates into about 1,000 yards of compost and mixed compost that we give back to the community. So that's it goes to hundreds of groups really.
Yeah.
Typically Queens Parks takes the most of it, but then we give to like groups like yours and other community groups, school groups, street tree care. We've started running a street tree care program where we care for about 1,000 trees a year with that compost, and applying it around the city. And so the budget for all of those groups, those 8 different groups, had at the height of COVID was at 7 million, and they planned to bring it down to 3.5 and sort of keep that 3.5 million between the 8 different groups and sort of keep that going as curbside happened. We've made an ask, when we were pushing back against city the cuts, we were like, restore all the funding. And we made a big ask for it to be restored to the original amount. But, frankly, we'd be happy with, the planned reduction to 3.5 million at the end. We'd have to do it less, but we'd make do. It's better than 0, which is what we have now. And that's across all the groups, the botanicals, like New York Botanical, Queens Botanical, Brooklyn Botanical, Snug Harbor, Lower East Side, Earth Matter, and Grown YC.
And could you show one more time that the scale of waste and where these fall? Because the orange bins are good. You can use them for all your meat, and we need both and in the city. But the one with, So that one with the triangle, ILSR.
Oh, the ILSR, okay.
Yeah. Because that really helped me to realize, so we've lost. So what the city is currently doing with the brown and orange bins is at the least preferred place. It's still preferred. It's all good. We need to work. We have a huge city. But what we're losing when we're losing our community composting is the medium and small scale, right? And that's a big, big deal. So the more we can stretch all the way up this scale and help with our community board 8, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Sarah, would you mind if we go to Lori, who's on the community board, and ask a question? And then I would love to hear what you have to say, Sarah. Can we unmute Lori?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to give a huge thank you to Big Use, because I have been a composting freak and a sustainability freak for so many years. I can't even here I can show you this is my compost and this is how I do it now. This is how I do it now in one of these things. Yeah. But it was years of me, trying to find the right receptacle to do it. But I kind of feel, because I've been doing this for so long, I sort of feel like when it comes to composting in New York City, it's like 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. It's like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. It's like they just don't continue. When they have success with something, it doesn't continue. But I have one question, and then I am willing to make a resolution if you need somebody to
I would love it. Let's hear from a couple more people before you do it. Okay, but I would love it, Lori.
I'll definitely do that. Okay. But here's my question. So I'm now confused, as I was before, but about the different composting receptacles. Like, I know the one that's on the corner, I guess it's the orange bin. No, not the orange bins. The ones that are like weekly, when they collect them at the farmer's market. Those are going away in a couple of weeks. And so I now understand that those are not really the most beneficial in the composting world. But
at the farmers markets, that was getting, from my perspective, all the farmers market stuff was getting taken to the best possible option.
What?
Yeah,
yes.
The farmers markets. What I'm saying is the curbside, which you guys don't have yet.
No.
That's going to the digesters.
But also the one by, for instance, Asphalt Green, across the street from you, Lori.
Is that the brown bins?
The brown bins and the orange bins, those are going to the digesters right now, unless the city decides to take another tack and do something else with them.
So that's what I was going to ask about it, because I know that I heard somebody speak a couple of weeks ago and she said that like it's not really composting, and now I kind of get it. But so the orange bins, which I frequent, are they like when people put stuff in there, I'm kind of disturbed about the plastics that go in there. Like people put their stuff in a plastic bag, which is not the way to go. You know, you should put it in a paper bag or a cardboard box, you know, which is what I do. But so what happens to that? Because that's all like plastics getting into the stream.
Yeah, it's a problem. With contamination is a huge problem for doing composting well. And so the city made this decision to allow people to put their waste into plastic bags and put it, into the composting, and that's been a problem. And they did that to get people to participate because the bins get gross if you don't line them or whatever, So they wanted to increase participation by making it easy, but that leads to more contamination. And more
Right.
contamination limits, it makes it more complicated to compost the material, because you then have to like somehow strip the plastic bags out. So they have machines that like spin the bags and try to grab and rip the bags out and release the organic material, but definitely leads to higher contamination. It makes it harder for the city to find large scale composters to take our material because it's more contaminated.
Yeah.
So it
Okay,
is a
that's
problem.
very unfortunate. I mean, like, why can't they put like instructions on the outside of the
Right.
bins? It's like it's not that difficult. You know, you put it in a paper
Yeah.
bag or you put it in a box. You know, you put it in
Or
a
you
cardboard.
empty it out. Can't you put it directly in?
Yeah, or you can empty out the plastic
Yeah.
bag. Yeah,
Right.
but like they need to say that because people don't understand. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you for listening, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Larry.
Sarah?
Have you
Sarah?
unmuted me?
Yep. Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay. Number one, the orange bins, to finish those babies off, they go to an anaerobic digester. They are burnt up. They are not composted. That the big clue on that was the fact that, yeah, you could put your plastic bags in there. No way, shape, or form are those things being turned into compost, finished compost. They are being burnt up and they are producing methane. Not a lot. And then, I mean, even more ridiculous is that this stuff is being carted from these orange bins all over the city out to somewhere in the wilds of Brooklyn, and they're producing power for 200 homes and a lot of methane. So, later for that. In terms of us and compost, really, the Upper East Side has been inspirational in terms of their commitment to bringing their compost, not in plastic bags, bringing it to the farmers markets. In 2018, this is before COVID, we collected at the 82nd Street Farmers Market 100,000 pounds. And 2019, just before COVID hit, we collected 150,000 pounds, people
Wow.
dropping off on Saturday. There would be like 20 bit more than actually they would be collecting at Union Square. We were so proud.
Yeah.
And this stuff would come back to us in the gardening that happens in our parks, that happens the project of the gardening that's going on in the bicycle islands on First Avenue. And we hand it out to buildings that want to compost in their gardens, anywhere and anywhere that people would like to have it. And it's really, like one beautiful thing. And so that this would be eliminated as a program in our city is just, I mean, it's really unfathomable. And they're only expanding this in places like California. We can't be left in the dust by California. No way, shape, or form. And I mean, there should only be more of it, and like that.
Yeah.
And in terms of the energy thing, by the way, and this is how things get forgotten. Years ago, there was some sort of there were turbines were sunk in the East River up, and they were to provide. It was a kind of an exploratory project, and it would provide power for a couple of buildings on Roosevelt Island. I think one of them being where the Gristedes was, that building, and a couple of others. Well, those turbines produced so much power that they overwhelmed and they couldn't find what to, and also that then the current was so brisk that the first design that they had, they were ripped apart. So they have reinstalled them, and it's like things get forgotten in our, in this city. So those are forgotten. The whole white roof thing. I mean, I'm getting a little off subject right now, but we were painting roofs white to make things cooler. That has gotten lost as a program. We can't let compost happen to compost.
I started
No
that
way, shape, or
program.
form. Huh?
I started the Cool Roofs program.
Did you?
Yeah.
Let's get it going again. It's
No.
so simple.
Yeah, well, it was funded by
Turn
the
college
city.
kids loose in the summer.
Yeah, someone else got the contract, so
But
there
it
you go.
died. It doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, we ran the pilot for the city and then just went somewhere else.
Let's get it back. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So,
And Sarah does amazing work with Grow NYC. And yes, Sarah, we need to get our composting in our green markets.
amen. Amen. And we're Upper East Siders. We don't settle for less than the best and asking the most from ourselves.
And we have the best here.
And we have the best.
Central Park has a Mount compost too, so we're,
I was going to ask what happens with Central Park. Do they do their own composting?
Well, they have a very inactive pile, so they have just
Yes, they do.
They put all the leaf and yard waste in a big pile and then let it sit there and come back to it eventually. So it's
I was there this afternoon. They
Yeah.
don't even have like paper waste bins out now. I don't know what the heck is going on. It's weird.
And Christine is the other amazing, that gave me a great education, Christine.
Amazing. Amazing person.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Christina.
Just want to say hi. Thank you so much, Justin, for everything you do for our community. One thing that I think is important for people to realize is not only since 2015 has Big Reuse been Roosevelt Island's partner, but we have diverted, talking about the numbers, over 380,000 pounds of food scraps have gone not to landfill, but to big reuse to process. And that's a gigantic number. So I'm just going to make it really easy for you. Think of 100 SUVs full of food scraps, banana peels have gone not to landfill to create methane gas, but directly over to big reuse, less than 2 truck miles away. So they can't be more efficient. And of course, Julia and others mentioned that compost, once processed, came back to our school projects, our landscapes, our garden plots, a huge brand new pocket forest, dump trucks of spongy, great, nutrient-rich compost came back to feed that forest. And I think everyone's forgetting compost is water absorbent. And Justin had that really cool slide that showed how water absorbent it is. We are facing shorelines. We're all near the New York estuary, AKA East River. The way to stop flooding in cities that are full of hardscapes, cement or asphalt, is to create porous permeable land. And the way you do that is improve the soil. When we created the pocket forest on April 6th, it felt like a trampoline. It was so spongy from all of that great compost being put into that area, and the wood chips from Greenwood Cemetery also reusing these materials nearby. But that is going to absorb, they think, from 3 times to 30% more water during rain events. What does that mean? It means it's not flooding. It's not bringing pollutants into the river and hurting wildlife and humans nearby. So that's just another thing to think about. I see the orange bin. I see orange on fire. Put in your plastic bag to burn it on up. That's what orange means. And sure, it's better than landfill, but not when you're releasing methane gas into the air because you have extra and you have to flare it. So the green bins are local. You're connecting with people, you're learning together. And now we even save fall leaves at Four Freedoms Park. This is a state, maybe a federal park. They are giving us those materials to put back into the earth. So that's all I'm going to say. Very important. If we can do a resolution, let's do it.
We are going to do it. I just have to also say, when you're talking about all of those orange peels, I keep thinking of how many less ugly garbage bags will be on our streets, because they would be going to composting rather than to the garbage bins. That's the way it is now. So thank you. I hope I'm not missing, Lori. I know I'm going to mess the name BICA. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce the name of Nguyen.
That's okay. It's Beach Nanoyan. Thank you. Oh, let me turn
I'm
on my
sorry.
camera. That's okay. So I support everything that everyone has said. I've been a longtime composter. I actually have a couple of tumblers on my terrace that I use currently, but for meats and animal products and stuff, I do use the orange things because they're there. My question is, with the marine transfer station so close by to us, is there, in the face of like the budget cuts, is there room there or a way to lobby, the actual sanitation department site at the marine transfer station to set up some small scale composting of some sort?
Oh, what a great idea. Does anybody know the answer to that? Justin?
I don't know about how much space they have, so I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if they have enough space, but I mean, we were going to get some space from sanitation department at this sort of abandoned Greenpoint Marine Transfer Station, but then that got also swept up in the budget cuts. So I think it's possible.
I mean,
why don't we look into it?
I'd love to sort of tie them in more directly with the efforts. Like I feel like there's perhaps some sort of a distance between, I don't know, the powers that be at sanitation and the sort of grassroots efforts to compost. And I don't know.
We invited them to this meeting and they weren't able to come.
Yeah,
so
well, there you go.
No comment.
Yeah, well, they haven't, with the new administration, definitely the new approaches with every new administration, which is why sometimes the programs seem like they're going backwards and forward, because every administration brings in a different approach.
Right.
And the current commissioner of sanitation, she's Tish. So like the Tish hospital, like the wings at various hospitals and the art center at NYU, that's her family. So she's definitely not like a community organizer. She's a billionaire. So she has some different perspectives. I'm not besmirching that. I'm just saying,
instead of doing the work she's doing.
They've funded a lot of amazing things. That family's funded a lot of amazing things in the city for sure.
Right. Robert, maybe we'll talk to Will about talking about the marine transfer station. That was a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks.
Should we go back to Ben? Is there anybody new? We have repeats. Ben?
And Barbara, I want to ask something as well, but at
Sure.
the end, once everybody else has done.
Okay.
Go
Ben?
ahead.
Awesome, thanks. Really, really quick question. Is there a way to monetize the composting, or you guys try to avoid getting into monetizing? Because I know that your funding is mainly from New York City, New York State, but is there any way you could complement that funding by selling the compost, or you prefer not to go down that path? That's my question.
Can we
Yeah,
undo Sarah Gallagher again?
yeah, I mean, that's it is a possibility, but yeah, as when we were funded by the city, that wasn't the part of the mission was to give it away free to groups. So we hadn't even pursued a business model.
Actually, my question is very related to, what Ben just asked. I was thinking of the same thing, that what about like maybe even parks, that, you kind of, especially there's like Rupert Park, which is going to go through complete demolition and like rebuild. What if something like this is incorporated in part of it on the side, and that kind of generates the resources because, you're putting it back into the thing. Is that something that's kind of like we have like in different areas, smaller ones, because you obviously showed the whole grid, that is done?
We'd love to see, I mean, to us, that would be the ideal solution, is for parks to have sort of underutilized areas or places that are just storing piles of yard waste be turned into active composting sites. So it would turn that material over quicker and make better material out of it, and make more like fertilizer for other green infrastructure projects. So that's what we would ideally like. I mean, Gail Brewer is actually has legislation that she's introduced to try to get to push parks to do that.
Yeah. And just the thing that would it smell a lot if it is done? And the other is, what about the methane again? Is that because, obviously at parks you have young kids and families coming in. So
Well,
is it
yeah,
doable as well practically?
Yeah, if you do composting well and it's under controlled environment, like we're next to a hotel and Queensbridge houses, and we've never gotten a complaint. So hotel balconies overlook our site, and we've never had a complaint. So you can do it well and under control and not release a lot of odors. It can be done badly and release a lot of odors, just like it smells like a garbage pile. So it's about management. And then on terms of what bad vapors being released or pollutants being released, like typical composting does not release like methane. It releases a tiny bit, but it's when it goes anaerobic and is badly managed, then it starts to release sort of smelly odors, but which is also methane.
Okay,
part
that's
of that. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Ellen Pallavi?
We need to unmute Ellen. Yeah.
If you got funded again, would you then also get your land back?
I don't know. It's confusing from our perspective because we thought, yeah, it just seems to be a weird push. Parks for our Queensbridge site, so we took that unused area, turned it into this nationally recognized composting site. Parks has blocks and blocks of parking, but they're being really insistent on kicking us off to get our space back. So I'm not sure if the city has just decided they're done with community composting and they're like, we'll get rid of that site there, we'll get rid of the funding, and we're just done, and it's all going to go to the digester, and let's just move forward. So I don't know what's going on politically, because to everyone else that comes to this, they're like, oh, you're taking leaves from parks and you're making compost that parks uses, and it makes everything more sustainable. It seems like a no-brainer. Seems like a win-win for parks. They're not paying for it, sanitation's paying for it, and you cleaned up the site for them in the process. You engage people at the site, you engage people outside the site, and engage them into making, like, working on parks property, the green parks property. It would be a win, but I don't, I'm sort of flabbergasted of like the
Yeah,
sort of
I have a
opposition
few
we've
questions also. Yeah. Obviously so. Laura, then we'll go to some of the community board people.
Hello, I'm a volunteer with the Hockey Compost Collective, which is on Roosevelt
Great.
Island that works
Yeah, hey.
with Big Reuse and Julia and Christina. And you guys are getting around to the point that I was just going to make, which is that it's great to think about expanding composting to all these other locations, but Big Reuse has this state-of-the-art location, right? That they've invested so much in building these technology that lets us be able to compost there. So I wonder, Justin, if you could tell us how Community Board 8 can advocate for you keeping your site and not getting evicted, because it isn't a done deal yet.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would
Could
be
I
great.
ask a question? Can we put that? We do want to talk about resolutions. Do you
Yeah.
mind if we go through the other questions? And then, of course, that's going to be a major discussion. I mean, thank you for asking, but I'd like to go through the questions before we talk about the resolution, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Lori, are you going to just do a resolution, or do you have another question?
I think Sarah is also here. I think she wants to say.
No, I just have another quick question. When I used to live in Washington Heights, I used to use the brown bins because there was an apartment that was nearby that I used to, I determined their when they had the bins out, and I just used to sneak in and like use their bins. Are they also part of the I forgot the words you used, but they're the bad ones?
Well, they were, when you were using them, they were going to a compost site. So this is a new thing of really scaling up the digester. Is something
Okay.
that's just happened with the rollout of curbside in Queens and Brooklyn. So if you were using them, like a couple of years ago, the city was actually shipping that compost out of the city to various processors outside the city who are composting it. Or
now, I mean, like there's a row of them. I live near a public school, and every week they put out, their brown bins. But so if I were to, not admit it, but if I were to use their bins, that's still, they're going to digesters now.
Yeah, and again, it's better than
Right.
throwing
No,
it in the landfill, but it is going to the digester.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sarah? Sarah Gallagher?
Sarah, you should be seeing a prompt to unmute.
Okay, I did. Okay.
Okay,
Can you
great.
hear
Thanks.
me?
Yeah.
I'm on the board of, or the Citizens Advisory Group for the Marine Transfer Station. And we are within a year of the original agreement of only 70 trucks a day coming through there, and they are going to want to amp that up, hugely. And it's going to be a big fight. So I think that looking at that facility for any other, like they're doing compost or anything, forget it.
Maybe that's another meeting we can have about the Marine Transfer Station.
Right, but it really, it's not going to be possible there. It's a big yawning. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been inside the thing, but there just isn't any place for a little pocket operation like this to be going on. It's giant trucks moving through and dumping giant amounts, and anyway, like that. So
Sarah has
and
told me.
also in terms of within the parks, then you're going to be dealing with the volunteer squad too, and people moving around. It's I think that having things as much centralized as they can be is really the most efficient.
Thank you. Addison, was your hand up? I thought
No, I didn't have it up, but
okay. I'm going to ask just a few questions before we get to resolutions. Just in terms of the processing site under the Queensboro Bridge, this is my problem. It is actually in Queens, and it is parks. The good news is we have a new commissioner of parks, and she happens to be one of ours who is a park lover and a composting lover and so on. I was hoping Tricia would be on. But in terms of the resolution, certainly I know that is the word to prevent the eviction of it, or is it to do funding of it, or both?
Do
Is it the,
both. Well, they're
it
two
is
different,
both?
yeah, they're two different sort of things we're asking folks to do. Is one, we have this composting site underneath the Queensboro Bridge that's part of parks. It's up to parks um, to decide whether we stay there or not. So we're asking the community boards 1 and 2 in Queens asked, basically issued resolutions being like, look, our communities have benefited from the site and we'd like that site to remain. So I could send you what they've issued.
Okay, and I guess we could do the same thing because Roosevelt Island is CB8 in part of ours. You know, we have to be careful about not stepping over the borders, unfortunately. So when somebody makes resolutions, I think that we can make it, and maybe you would tell us what to do. Um, it's, in terms of, so you've almost telling me some good news. A couple of years ago, it was still during COVID, we did hear from Sanitation to say that they were going to have bins, recycling bins in Manhattan. Also, I worked with my co-op building and they were going to do it, and then it just died and wasn't there. Do you think it will be better by time Manhattan does get the bins? I'm in a way happy we didn't get it because it isn't what they said, you know, it isn't what I promised.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many changes happening at Sanitation. I'm not sure what their long-term strategy is for
But certainly
recycling.
we could work that it should be for composting and
Yeah.
don't throw your bags in there.
Well, yeah, I think that would be good. And I think ideally, you know, as we, you know, try to get the city to look at other options that are and to look at them from a climate perspective to choose the most you know, effective method for processing organic waste, you know. And I think that's, you know, composting. And so there should be a study that really looks at like the impacts from this. And so we can go forward without just, you know, charging for it without a real analysis of the climate impacts of these approaches. And that's
I'm sorry. Yeah.
and there's another, you asked about funding too. So I guess the other thing we're asking folks to do is it's a DS Department of Sanitation thing and a Mayor Adams thing is being like, please like restore this, you know, funding for this program that laid the groundwork for curbside organic waste collection and had so many other positive impacts in terms of educating
Yes,
people.
this is a resolution I would like to have.
Yeah.
I just have another question that has been an obsession with me. We have something called a rain garden right near me, and I've never quite understood what it is. I know it's EPA runs it with DOT because it's on the street. It's supposed to be near where there's water um, runoffs. But I don't know if there's rules, and it seems to me that composting should be in every one of those rainforests because it would collect the water. Do
Yeah.
you know anything about it?
We're one of the things we're trying to
Not
work on.
rainforests, rain gardens.
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
rain garden. Yeah, I'm trying to get the rain gardens. The rain gardens are funny, like they were installed by DEP, but like that kind of you know, installations typically maintained by either DOT or park. So it's one of these things that you know, DEP, who does our sewage, installed them all over the place, but then it's sort of up to parks or DOT to manage it. So they're sort of fall between groups in managing. So then sort of left up to the community to step in and try to figure out how to best manage it. So that's one of these other things we're actually um, you know, would like to work on and see be improved because they had big investment. And the whole point of them, right, is to absorb more water into the soil and reduce runoff into the combined sewer overflow system by making our city more permeable, as Christine talked about
Right.
earlier.
And I don't know why it's where it is, rather, which is right by a bus stop. It is problematic, in my opinion, because the bus stops and you can't get by it.
Yeah.
Why? And I just thought, Lori, are you ready to make? I see it as two resolutions. I see it as one about the processing center under the Queensboro Bridge, and the other is for the green markets to do the collection. Do you agree, Lori?
Yes, Yes, I'm just taking some notes here. I'm not great at writing these resolutions, but what I've put down is that, whereas composting is a key element of fighting climate change, whereas big use has had a fruitful relationship with the New York City Department of Sanitation, and where creating compost enriches the soil and does a lot of other great things. Be it resolved that CB8 implores New York City to reestablish community composting at the green markets, as well as maintaining, if you want a separate resolution,
I think it should be two separate resolutions.
Okay,
and I'm not sure if one of them goes to parks. One goes to the green markets, I believe, is sanitation. I think the other one should go to, the city
Well,
just.
I think we should
generally.
have two. We should have two.
I think we should have two of them, Lori. But
Okay.
we could say the same thing for both. That's great whereases.
Okay, but here's my so let's see. Okay, so be it resolved that CB8 implores New York City to reestablish the compost sites. That's two, right? It's two of them.
Well, yeah, I think it's the location for parks, which is the Queensbridge. Please don't evict the Queensbridge site, basically. And then there's like the city like restore funding for community composting, which funds multiple different groups across the city.
Okay, so we'll just say reestablish the community compost sites.
Yeah.
And maybe and not to evict the composting. Do you call them processing center? Is that the right terminology?
I call them our community composting site.
Okay, composting sites under the
composting
Queensboro Bridge. And I want to emphasize, because they may say that's Queens, emphasize that services Roosevelt Island.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then the second, so let's vote on this one. Anybody voting no or not for cause?
We need to call the question still. So I'll call the question.
Okay, thank you. And I'll second it.
And Barbara Addison, sorry, do you want me to read the roll or who's here? There's
That's
only
right,
four.
let's do the roll.
Yeah.
Yep, so for the record of board members who are present at the time of the vote, the three coaches, Barbara Rutter, Addison Lev, Sahar Hussain, and then board member Lori Boris.
Valerie still on?
Valerie left and Bradley left.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Anybody voting no, not for cause? Great, it goes on. I didn't leave much time for that. Goes down as unanimous vote. Lori, number two.
Okay, and then number two would be, I would say the same things, for
Absolutely.
the beginning of it, and be it resolved. Wait a minute. Be it resolved that New York City reestablish curbside. Do you want to say curbside recycling?
No, I was thinking of the green markets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think
Okay.
curbside won't come until later.
Okay.
Or something.
Compost collection at the city's green markets.
Or street, I think that we should say food scrap collection. Am I right? Sarah,
Yeah.
how many green markets do we have in CB8? It's 82nd Street, 92nd Street, Roosevelt Island, 60. Do we still have the one on 68th Street?
Sarah is not. She needs to be unmuted.
Sarah, you should be able to unmute. The prompt was sent.
It's at Lenox Hill, Robbins Plaza.
Okay.
It used to be there. It's not. All of our three historic places where, yes.
No, I'm talking about green markets where it should.
Yeah. And these were our traditional locations where we, everyone brought them. 82nd Street Market, 92nd Street Market, and now it's the Lenox Hill, Robbins Plaza,
And Roosevelt Island is
Yeah.
CB8.
Well, and then Roosevelt Island, although, yeah, I mean,
They already have it.
yeah, they already have it, so
Right.
it's been taken away from our traditional places.
Okay, maybe we'll mention those three, Lori, specifically.
I will second
Because-
Lori's motion as it's being written. So as like the details are.
Thank you. We'll call the question. Anyone voting no, not voting for cause, or abstaining? Thank you.
Brilliant.
Justin, would you want to add anything that we should be adding?
Mhm.
Would you
Well, I have-
mind sending the wording?
budget.
I'm sorry, Justin.
Yeah, I mean about the budget thing, if we do have lots of language that you guys could look at and pull from that I could send you and decide if you want to
That's
incorporate
great.
that talks about the budget, it talks about Queensbridge, so you could use those as jumping off points if to add to that resolution.
Thank
Okay.
you. I wonder, I'm stuttering because I wonder if we should be getting Parks, maybe have a joint meeting with Parks about this too, where Parks would want to have an item about composting.
Nah. I don't know.
Okay, we'll see. Since we have such a great new borough commissioner, Tricia Shimamura is part of Community Board 8, has been on our board.
Oh, cool. That's great.
Yeah, we're very happy.
Well, Central Park, you can ask them about, investing in Central Park composting, because that would be a cool thing for your.
Should we have
for
another
your-
resolution to say that, or just leave it? Maybe we'll just leave that, talk about it.
But next time you guys talk to her, be like, yeah, we'd like to see more composting in the park.
Does Laura have something else to add? See, Laura's hand is up.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that our green market on Roosevelt Island has also lost our food scrap collection site. When you were
Oh, so we
listing
should
those
add
out.
that to it. Great.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Am I missing anybody else?
I think we're all set now.
Thank you so much. And I just again want to thank, I want to thank Sarah and Christina for helping me along the way and helping me get it. And Margaret Foss was so good in introducing. We went through a whole chain, and that's how we got to you, Justin. Through Margaret.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thanks for joining, Justin.
Anybody want to suggest we end the meeting?
Yes.
I'll suggest
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Good
great.
night,
And so
everybody.
you'll send us some wording also.
Yeah, I'll send you some wording right off this.
Wonderful.
After this. Thanks so
Thank
much.
Thank you, Barbara,
Thank you.
for
And
organizing
thank you,
this.
Robert, as usual.
Thanks for your work too, Justin.
Yeah, we're happy to work. We've had such great times with Roosevelt Island and Christina and Julia, and all
Now
the
you have
different
to come
amazing
to
groups
our
that are on
side of the
Roosevelt Island.
river. We're on the west side of the river, but we're part of it. We need you also.
Cool. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.